Aloha, this is Emily Thoreau-Threat, host of the Grief and Happiness podcast. Every Friday, I share with you my love notes, giving you a little something to think about as you navigate your grief journey, finding happiness expanding along your way. Every Tuesday, I post my regular podcast, sharing wonderful conversations with people you can relate to and offer you encouraging ideas and helpful inspiration. And I invite you to our Grief and Happiness Alliance gatherings for free every week on Zoom. Information provided in the show notes. Aloha. My podcast for you today is Taking Care of Yourself. I had a good friend who was there for me years ago when I was struggling with my grief. My parents had died, and I had such a big hole in my life. My dad died first, suddenly, and I had so much to do with helping Mom deal with all that needed to be done. And I had family to take care of and 2 jobs. And what that all led to for me was blocking my grief, dealing with my own grief. My mom lived a few more years, and I had so much to do for her. I ended up bringing her to live with me. And that was challenging because of the effects of the brain tumor she had. For the last few months of her life, she finally consented to have someone stay with her around the clock at her home. She lived an hour away from me, so there were so many hours driving up and down the highway. And after she died, she left so much more for me to take care of. I simply didn't have the time to grieve. So I tucked my grief away where it seemed to grow and fester. At that time, I had a close friend. He knew my mom, and he dealt with the death of his own mother years before. He was safe. I didn't have to put on my public front that I had been using for work and for my other activities. I didn't have to be strong, like I felt like I needed to be for my children and my husband who were close to my mom and relied on me to support them through their grief. He was just there with no demands or no expectations of me. I could tell him anything about what I was experiencing, and I knew he wouldn't judge me. He just listened to me as I felt sorry for myself or as I got frustrated with the situation. And he didn't tell me what I needed to do. I really didn't want advice. I just wanted to talk. There were also times when I didn't want to talk, and that was okay with that. He didn't make me feel guilty about that when I wasn't doing or what I was doing. I know he couldn't make me feel anything, but having others have expectations of me was a challenge. I only took 1 day off from my teaching job when my mom died and 1 day off for the funeral. Even though I'd worked full time, I wasn't entitled to bereavement leave. I was expected to continue my working the same level without anyone even noticing how hard it was for me or how fragile I felt. When he noticed that I wasn't eating, he'd bring me food. He didn't ask me if I wanted something to eat. He just brought me familiar foods that he knew I'd eat without me knowing that I probably wouldn't eat if he wasn't there. He also noticed when something needed fixing and just fixed it without asking him, or his kindness allowed me to breathe when I felt under great pressure. I've been asked about self-care, what that actually means for grieving. In answering that question, I reflected upon my friend. Caring for myself, I followed his example, which would be a good start for you in doing your own self-care. First, don't pressure yourself. I didn't have to live up to anyone else's expectations, and neither do you. When I didn't want to be around people, I could choose to stay at home and read or watch a movie or take a bubble bath. When I did want to go someplace, I could ask a friend to go with me, which provided a buffer or escape of something that came up that I didn't want to face at the moment. If I wanted to talk to someone, I'd make a phone call. And if I didn't want to talk to someone but needed to vent or deal with feelings, I just got out my journal and would write until I didn't need to write anymore. I would remember that I needed to eat, and I would make wise choices about which food would serve me best. I did, however, stop by the bakery that was on the way to campus for a maple bar and milk when I went to work in the early hours. Treating myself occasionally to something special felt good. And I would smile. And I would notice when something needed to be done, and I'd take care of it. This felt good too, knowing that I was capable of taking good care of myself. I also started working on my smile. I realized that I didn't have to have someone there to smile at. I could just smile for me. And when I did smile, I felt better. I would practice smiling in the mirror, or I'd find something funny to read or watch on television. Smiling seemed to release something inside of me that allowed me to feel good. I encourage you to think about someone special who's taken care of you, or think of a friend who was there right when you needed. Think also about any kindness people have done for you. Write these things in your journal. Then, when you're ready for some self-care, do those things for you. Pamper yourself. Wrap yourself up in your own love. Remember how special you are and live your best life. This is the greatest self-care. Thanks for listening, and be sure to order your Grief and Happiness Handbook and cards on Amazon. All profit from these sales go directly to the Grief and Happiness Alliance nonprofit organization to support these podcasts and all that the organization does to provide comfort and support to those who are dealing with grief and loss. Mahalo. Thank you.